Hello and well met. This is Laren with the Fans Grounds Academy. Today I'm taking a look at ChatGPT 5, but you can use Grok or whatever AI tools that you have. Just remember that each one of the different AI platforms has a little bit different capabilities, and then there's free versus paid, those sort of things. So I just kind of want to let you know about that. This particular session is going to be a little bit less about Fantasy Grounds and more about creating content, in so much as maybe doing a solo AI kind of GM thing and allowing it to help you structure and to actually use ChatGPT or AI programs to help you with your development of content. And I thought that this would be really good for newer GMs or for people who don't have a lot of time. So I think the biggest overall advantage in using an AI tool is that you don't have to do as much typing, and you get pretty quick results. It's not always the best results, so just remember that. But nonetheless, I'm going to start taking a look at some of the things that we could talk to and that we can discuss, and making a template and those sort of things to kind of help you build a session in ChatGPT or one of your favorite tools. Now, not all of them have the same capability. Just remember that sometimes they have limitations and that sort of thing. But if you have a paid version, you usually have a lot more functionality. So what I want to do is let's start talking about the project framework. So in ChatGPT, you can make your own project. So we have a project definition. So we're going to basically, for AI Dungeon Master sessions, kind of like a working framework. So the purpose is going to use ChatGPT as kind of like your Dungeon Master to run episodic sessions, whether it be D&D or you can do it in Pathfinder or whatever rule set you're comfortable with. The goal is to kind of make it more story-first gameplay, so it's kind of fun for you and it's not always mechanical. So there'll be some dice-driven narration, blending rules, lore, and cinematic description. So you kind of want it to be a little bit more fun and a little less rulesy, I guess. But it does have that underneath it, so it's more like telling a story instead of just rolling dice and comparing numbers. Use case. So we're going to possibly use something like this to serve as a blueprint and to practice for, do some practice runs for building custom adventures, encounters, researching material, and playtest content. So if you're building your own adventure, you want to sell it commercially, let's say, you can use these sessions to kind of feel out and playtest some of the content you want to write. Or you might even just copy and paste out of one of your Pathfinder PDFs an encounter or a certain section of the module and have it run through different scenarios to kind of get maybe an idea of some potential outcomes. I mean, the outcomes are infinite. It just depends on the people are playing, the characters are using, and how the adventure's set up. But using the AI tool might be able to give you some ideas on how you might want to help steer the adventure. We're going to provide instructions for ChatGPT as DM. So we're going to define what it's supposed to do. Be a dungeon master. It's going to control the NPCs, factions, monsters, and the environments. It's going to be the narrator, so it does cinematic, sensory storytelling. A dice roller, you can roll openly and narrate the outcomes, and not just pass or fail or numbers. You can get some like actual information, like story stuff. And journal keeper, so you can recap the NPCs, the faction, loot, rumors, consequences at the session's end. So you want to, my guess is, this is just my opinion, to keep these sessions between 45 minutes and 90 minutes. Any more than that is going to be really tough on any AI tool to keep track of it all. And I think if you do it more episodically instead of all at once or just a huge campaign, it will help you get through these sessions, and then you can link them together on your own accord. So the narration style that I defined for my instructions would be short scenes, 5 to 7 sentences. Lore quests, or givers or lore, maybe 3 to 6 paragraphs, depending on what the depth of information is. Always try to include sensory cues like sound, smell, sight, touch, motion, those sort of things. So it's not always you see this, you see that, or you hear this, you hear that. Combat, we want it to be kind of fast, descriptive, and lethal. So some combats really draw out. And I think when you're playing solo with the AI GM, you don't want it to take forever to resolve combat. You can save that for the tabletop. So I think doing that will just give you kind of a clue, and maybe even help you learn the GM a little bit more narratively and less number crunching. Although some people like that. Role play, so include that intrigue, dilemmas, shady deals, stuff like that. That really makes the story more fun and interesting. And of course, exploration, such as scarcity, hazards, disorientation, playing into things like not having light or having their food, or even like not getting enough sleep, those sort of things kind of up the exploration part of it, the environmental impacts for the gameplay. I don't think those get played up enough. I'm guilty of it too. I don't really get into that too much, but I really think it should be something that comes up occasionally, especially if you're in a hostile environment and that sort of thing. So the other thing was talking about dice outcomes. So, like when you roll a natural 20, it's almost like a miraculous or heroic success, right? And a natural 1 or critical failure is catastrophic or cursed failure. And then we'll get into margin scaling, which is something that I want built into these are instruction sets, by the way, for the ChatGPT tool. So plus 10 would be like overwhelming success. So that's plus 10 from the target number. Plus 5 would be solid success. Exact DC, so if you roll the exact number, it'd be narrow success with like a minor cost. -1 to -4, like a near miss. -5 to -9, clear failure. And plus or minus 10 would be overwhelming failure or disaster. So those are things that you would hope that the ChatGPT and the tools that you're using will be able to help you with that. So it's not just, oh, you rolled a 10, you passed. Occasionally that's kind of fun. Like, I like sharing with my players when they roll a natural 20, but I don't, like, if they roll a 19, I don't necessarily want to tell them the number. I want to tell them what it looks like in the story, in the narrative sense. Once in a while, if they ask, I might tell them, but I don't think it's as important to know pass or fail. I think it's how they failed or how they passed. I think it's more fun, but it can be a little bit more drawn out. So sessions lasting 45 to 90 minutes or a max of 2 hours. So that's usually pretty good for AI. I think that it's expanded. It has a lot more memory. A lot of it hallucinates a lot less. And like I said, you can use Anthropic. You can use Grok 4 or 3, and you can use ChatGPT 5. Those are probably your top 3. I like Grok. It does good kind of overall. So does ChatGPT. I really like Anthropic's Claude. It does really well with writing, but there might be other weaknesses and strengths depending on which one you use. Text output guidelines. So you kind of want a little bit of a formatting. So using italics for a scene description, using quotes for dialogue. Keep moment-to-moment narration pretty tight, like 5 to 7 sentences max. Expand only when revealing lore, quests, or major NPC expositions, maybe 3 to 6 paragraphs. So this would be like, a quest giver, or perhaps the end of the adventure where you get all the information, that sort of thing. For combat, so we want the narrative kind of thing with sensory details, like the clang of steel, the acrid smoke, sparks, pressure, recoil, dread, those sort of things. Success would be like a visceral impact. Failure might be a whiff, strain, or a setback. And criticals would be extraordinary flair, like miraculous triumphs or humiliating disasters, that sort of thing. Like people giving high fives, in the middle of combat when they pass by each other, that kind of thing. Exploration survival, so highlight, sleep deprivation, hunger, lighting, encumbrance, and navigation. So I think this can be done well with AI. It might be harder to do or to convey in a tabletop, but especially like virtual tabletop, but it depends on the rule set and your gaming style. Failures should escalate tension. So like going to the wrong tunnel, losing supplies, some dangerous noises that you're making, that attracts enemies, those sort of things are really helpful for the exploration and survival. Success should really feel like progress or resourcefulness, not just getting from point A to point B. Skill checks and challenges. So you can offer multiple possible skill paths, so not just one role fixes everything or one role does everything. Give it some different angles to figure out information, not just the same role every time. Like maybe switch between athletics and acrobatics for a physical thing, or between wisdom and intelligence. What would you learn between those two things if it was more of a mental thing? Skill challenges may require 2 to 3 consecutive rolls, so you might have to do one roll for this, another roll for that, or mix and match different types of skills. So narrate each result based on dice margins, layering, progress, or setbacks. So this was kind of like what we were saying with combat, is to kind of make that more interesting and not just pass or fail. Saving throws. So you can narrate those as like moments of luck or fate, or even a divine or cursed intervention. Can blend mystical forces such as the gods, demons, destiny, with training, scars, and grit. So I think that saving throw is a combination of luck and such and magic, but it's also a combination of training and experience and sort of thing. So it does play in narratively, and it's, again, not just pass or fail. Lore information and delivery. So captives or extortion could be something that you would get information out of them. You could get information out of books, scrolls, and spell books. Quest givers and NPCs, and then spellcraft would be like describing gestures, components, and sensory effects for more dramatic prose. So if when you're casting a spell, you're not saying, I'm casting Fireball. You actually say, okay, I'm casting Fireball, but I'm taking out my sulfur, and, sort of like that. Maybe not as generic, but, more story-like. So that's kind of hard to do unless your spellcasters have written up their own spells. So they could even have like words for their spells. I know a couple players that actually went the extra mile occasionally, and they wrote up the words or even a song for whatever they were doing if they were a bard. I thought that was good. I gave them extra, I gave them like experience, or I would give them advantage and that sort of thing. Journal recap. So this is important too. So at the end of each session, you want the session number, locations, NPCs and factions, player choices and consequences as part of your research. Loot and resources that can be adjusted or added or removed, and then rumors or unresolved tasks or leads. So then the other thing is, that would be part of the instruction set for how you would want ChatGPT or your AI conversation to perform and how it will output information. And then you're going to give it resources if it allows for it. So for ChatGPT 5, you can, if you have a paid version, you can upload your documents and then use those for reference. So it has a starting point and a building point for mechanics, locations, the setting. So in my case, I'm going to use the SRD 5.1, and then I would use maybe the player's handbook and the DM's guide if you have access to it online. And then the other thing is, maybe you have a lot of resources on the DM's Guild with PDFs and such. You can upload some of those too. And the lore, you can grab that from whatever rule set you're using. I like wiki guides and portals and such for that sort of thing. So like the Candlekeep lore library, Forgotten Realms wiki, or basic the other settings, or from like Pathfinder. And then your supporting documents would be things that you upload. So you could put out your templates, your adventure creation guides, whatever you think is necessary. And then your adventure prompts. So this could be how you want the adventure prompts to be written. So you can make a document that ChatGPT can pull from so that it's not getting clobbered with, you know, constant back and forth, but then it just has a bottom line. So it's kind of what we're developing now, is that bottom line. Like, how do you want the AI to respond? What type of feedback and output? And then what it might expect from you. Like, you know, you might want to add in some narrative too. So when you're just typing, yes, I want to attack, or no, I want to retreat, you know, you might want to add a few more words to that to make it a little bit more descriptive. And I think you'll get better output in the long run. So the purpose of this is to take these blueprints and practice runs and use them in your games, or to develop content, or even to just practice your GM skills and get ideas and different things to help you with your games. Even as a player, you can use it to practice. You know, like, if you're going to play a wizard, you never played one before, maybe you're going to play a 3rd level wizard, you know, and that sort of thing. So this might help you with that too. So you can build custom adventures from episodic to campaign. So build it in pieces or chunks is probably best. In regards to scope, time, and the limitations of the memory. Test your counterbalance, like combat, hazards, resource management, that sort of thing. You could test for those things. You know, if you got a section in your adventure, even a pre-made adventure, if you state what it is and the section you're on, and maybe copy and paste the text from Fantasy Grounds into ChatGPT, it will help you run through some scenarios that may or may not work out. You can refine your narrative pacing, so short versus extended narration, like to see if a shorter narrative will be more impactful, or if you need that, you know, longer information. Experiment with rumors, NPC hooks, and faction interplay. So this would help with that a little bit. So, you know, do some stuff with there that not just have these cool characters and rumor tables and stuff, but how does all that stuff connect, and how does it work together, you know, to form your story. And then feedback loop. So this is important. So each session improves the system overall. So it will improve your input and output, what you're looking for, the things you don't like, and it will lead to research-backed, play-tested homebrew content and or game prep for a certain part of an adventure. So that's your framework for creating, you know, a session or a project or whatever you call it in whatever AI tool you use. So we got the project instructions for ChatGPT as a DM, or you can also make the role as a content creator, however you want to change that, or a player even. Your text output guidelines for like narration, combat, exploration, lore, or even if you're making content, maybe you have a certain type of text. Like often I'll use templates for Fantasy Ground, so it's easier to copy and paste. Also resources and references, your links and your docs, and then your purpose, you know, why are you doing it? Blueprints, playtesting, entertainment, you know, that sort of thing. So that is basically how I would go about this, and using AI tools, and then also having somewhat of an understanding of the role-playing system really helps a lot. It's not necessary, but it does make things a lot easier. And a lot of this stuff you don't really think about until you really start creating content or trying to develop something that's going to be fun for your table. So those are things that you'll want to consider when you're actually doing this as a player or a GM or even a content creator. So we're going to start from scratch, I guess, kind of. So what I want to do is I'm going to ask ChatGPT to take, this is a really long conversation that I started earlier today in planning. So what I had started with is, this is kind of how I got this going. So ChatGPT AI Dungeon Master. Virtual random dice rolls for skill checks, combat rolls, saves, and other rollable lists. Research the Underdark in the Forgotten Realms for the setting. So you can swap that out for whatever rule set, whatever settings. Like if I was doing Pathfinder, I would use the Archives of Nethys as a resource. I would upload the PDFs that are pertinent to that particular game, and then maybe a couple extra books for like characters and such. and then maybe the setting, guide or whatever, and go from there. And then you could just use that as your launch point for your one shots. Unfortunately 5e doesn't really have PDFs and such, but you have the SRD 5.2, and you can upload your own like formatting and templates and such, so you can get away with that. Plus there's so many wiki guides and so many videos and all kinds of stuff out there, so I think that rule set is covered pretty well. But if I was going to use a more obscure rule set, I'd make sure I at least have links that go to portals and forums, and maybe there's a guide or something, or information or talking or conversations going on in Reddit. You might want to point it to a Reddit link, or something like that, to help assist with the AI Dungeon Master, so it has information to pull upon, provided it has access to it. So what I've envisioned for this is, let's say you wanted to kind of do like an Underdark adventure. So I would kind of tame it down. If you just say Forgotten Realms, it's kind of like sky's the limit. But if you want a certain setting or a certain mood or a vibe, I would definitely include that in the beginning of your conversation, along with the lore, and you do your character creation and all that sort of thing, at least the basics, before you actually run the adventure. So this would be right after you've defined the project. So let's do that part first. So this is the work part. This is the not so fun part. So it's not bad though. So if you have access to the, like to a higher tier, I have ChatGPT Plus. I don't have the Pro. That's way too much money. But essentially, you can start a new chat. You can create a GPT, which is kind of like a project file, but that will kind of shoehorn it into like a box. I kind of want to make it a project. So projects are kind of new. So you can see I have projects here for Fantasy Grounds content. I have one for Kobold Press. I have one for Fallout, Dark Sun. I have the basic D&D SRD 5.2, so I might use this because I think it already has, it already has the SRD. So that's exactly what I'd want for this. And then what I could do with this is start using this conversation or this project to create my adventures with. So let's do a new project, and I'll probably upload the SRD and do the instructions. So let's do that first. I don't want to skip over this because it's probably the most important part. So if you have access, if the AI tool you're using supports this, then I recommend creating a project. But if not, you might just have to start with a conversation and just go from there and hope for the best. So new project. So it's going to be kind of writing, more or less. It isn't really for images so much, not so much for anything else, homework, And what we're going to call this is, in this case, I'm going to call it 5e, but what we can do is call it, let's call it, this is not that big of a deal, but I want to know if I see it, I'll know what it means. So I'll just say D&D 5e AI Game Master or Dungeon Master. So that way I'll know what this session is about. And it is based on writing. So AI, I'll just say AI Game Master. And then I'll put 5e in parentheses. So if you're going to do a project like this, I would do one per rule set, just so it has a little bit of separation. It's not going to kill you or hurt anything if you mix and match a bunch of rule sets, but I think it might, down the road, it might confuse things or mix different versions and that sort of thing. So I would probably make the project based on at least a certain rule set, at least. So create project. So that's just the header, that's just the basics. Now this has a section here where we can add files. So this is documents, code files, images, and more. So AI Game Master can access their content. So whatever you have available on your machine. So we'll go to downloads. We'll go to, let's see. I want to search for SRD not there. So let's look at, see, I could, like, if you're going to play in other game systems that have PDFs, you can upload those. At least the basic books. You don't have to upload all the adventures. Because honestly, you're trying to, most of the time, make your own stuff. But if you are running a certain adventure path or a certain module, you can upload that too to help you plan your session. So let's see. Where did I download that to? So new volume, downloads. Okay. So what I want to do is SRD. There we go, 5.2.1. Okay, so you can drag that and it will upload it. Now I already have this in other project files, but I'm going through this to show you the process essentially. So here I would if I was doing like Pathfinder, I would do the 3 main core rule books, maybe a couple extras, and that's about it. And then the main thing though is the instructions. So I want to add the files for reference, right? And then for all my really like long drawn out instruction sets, I would probably make that a document instead of adding the instructions to it, because that's really, it can take up a lot of, so you can add instructions, and then this is where the instructions, so I'm going to say rewrite the ChatGPT instructions for the project using the content above for reference. So it's going to go back to all the conversations that we had, and I had quite a lengthy, I mean, I was probably, writing for a couple hours just to get everything covered, try to figure out what exactly I want out of this thing. And from my input and the feedback from ChatGPT, it kind of gives you some things, but then it doesn't always give you what you want, so you got to kind of play with that until you get something like an outline, or in this case it's going to be like a template. So I'm going to say rewrite the ChatGPT instructions for the 5e project, 5e D&D. We'll say this will be 2024 because that's what the SRD is based on. And like I said, you could change this with whatever rule sets you're comfortable with. So let's see what it gives us here. So this is another instance where the conversation's already been started. And then this one back here is the new one that I'm going to be showing you. So it's going to go and start writing out the instructions. And there is a 1,500 character limit. So if your instructions are really lengthy, that may or may not be a good thing depending on, resources that you give it and, those sort of things. So be careful with that. You don't want, like, I think the pro version allows 8,000 characters for the instruction set, but you want to make it a little bit more simple. So it's going to define the role and purpose of the project, what the responsibilities for the AI tool is to be, and then probably your formatting, your output that you're looking for. Say wait. So right now it looks like everyone and their mom's using it. So it's Sunday, I think. So that's gonna slow things down a little bit. But yeah, so you're gonna make your project file, and then you're defining how you want to use the dice in this case, and then your gameplay focus. Like, how do you want to do that? Earlier I defined like the type of gameplay that I prefer, but what I said is to have combat, exploration, and role play, and then you can define a percentage. So if you want it to stick to more of a narrative or combat heavy or however, you can set that too in your instructions. I kind of left it open-ended because what I ultimately end up saying is that's going to fluctuate depending on the situation, because you have some sessions that are mostly all role play, some that's all combat. So I didn't want it to do that in regards to every single episode has to have a balance of the three. You know, I just want the overall to have at least three, but you know, that's just a preference thing and something I had thought about. So I also included links here for the settings. So I do want this to be Underdark, and I wanted to include Waterdeep, the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and the Forgotten Realms. You know, so these are things that it's going to draw upon to, you know, to help shape the story. And it even has some D&D Beyond links here, and here are some of the wiki guides. So these will help it along when you need to pull resources. And also, I mean, you can upload them, but what I read and what I experienced is that if you upload too many PDFs, it takes a long time for it to search through all those. So you want to just kind of keep it to a minimum if possible, like maybe just the 3 core books or something like that, especially if they're like 300 pages each. You kind of want to be careful with how much you're giving it. And like I said, if your instruction set needs to be longer, then you might need to upload it as a template instead of the actual instructions. But we'll see if this will fit. Because I want it to, yeah, see, this is already cutting off. Let me see. Underdark was the last thing. Yeah, that's right. So it got it all in there. So this is the instruction set. So this tells it where to look for resources, how you want it to respond, and the type of, you know, you're kind of setting it up around. In this case, this is going to be all Underdark because that I made that part of the definition. If you want this just to be a generic kind of DM, then you might want to leave that out and just put it in the conversation notes so that it's not going to just constantly refer back to those sorts of things only or focused. So that's kind of up to you, though, how you want to, you know, divulge the information to it and what kind of links you give it. Like I said, if you have a portal to your website, or maybe you use some of you use like portals like Obsidian and I think World Anvil and stuff. I don't know if it has access to those files, but that would be a good starting point. So if you're already doing a big amount of development somewhere else, you might be able to pull or at least copy and paste that data into a document and then feed that into your AI tool, and kind of gives you a starting point. So you're not having to start from scratch every time, because that's a lot of work. I mean, I don't care how experienced you are, you know, that's going to take a lot of work. All right, so let's see. All right, so this is just your starting point, right? So every time I want to do a session, I would come to this project and I would use that as my kind of like my starting point. So now I'm going to go back and let's do the beginning. Let's see, I wanted to create the session 0 setup for character creation and starting locations, the mood, the genre, you know, that sort of thing. So we'll see what it gives us. It kind of already knows what I'm talking about because earlier in the conversation we'd already kind of defined that. But all I'm doing is being lazy. I'm just going to have it reiterate this so that I don't have to scroll back 100 miles to see where we were talking about that. So that's why I'm doing it this way, because I didn't want to backtrack as much. Plus, since then, we've had a lot more conversations I can add to whatever it is. So session 0 setup. So this is kind of what I defined earlier, that usually I'm going to start at level 3, so at least that the characters have all of their main features for their character and not level 1. And then also, you know, kind of a starting point, like what city, what town, what continent, you know, somewhere where you're going to start, and then work with your backstory and start from there. And then tell or ask or request the ChatGPT to start the adventure, essentially. So here we go. So here's session 0 setup. Character creation guidelines start at 3rd level. Class and species, any from 2024 Player's Handbook. Tie choices to Waterdeep, Skullport, or Underdark backgrounds. You don't have to. I might change that. Background examples might be some suggestions here. I don't know if I like that, but that's kind of cool. Skullport flavor, Underdark survivor, urban intrigue. So these kind of fit in with the locations that I gave it. Consider ties to Zentarum, Brigandareth, Xanathar's Guild, City Watch, or Independent Thieves Guilds. Hooks. Every PC should have one personal motivation, revenge, profit, faith, or survival. You know, one of those. Starting location. So those are that. And then here's your mood options. And then here are your this is like your session 0 flow. You introduce the setting, create characters, personal hooks, you know, set the tone, group bonding, decide why the players are together, blah, 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 first hook. So let's go from there. So I'm going to copy this information. And this is what would be my starting point here. I'm just doing it from there because I actually started there, but I'm going to close that one now. Now we're starting kind of fresh. So I'm going to say, I'm going to request or ask, I'm going to say something like, use this as the launch for this session. So as an AI GM, use the information below as a, I'll say, launching pad for our session. Session 0 setup. So let's do that. So let's see what it gives me. And this will be interesting because it's going to look at the project files. It's going to look at the, you know, it's going to look at that stuff and hopefully give me some, okay, now it's kind of reiterating what I've already wrote, but hopefully it's going to refine it. Okay, so here's the first hook. Here's the teaser. And this also might give me a better idea of what kind of character I want to make, right? So if I already kind of have an idea of what the setting and the mood is, it might change how I want to build the character. I do kind of like random characters in settings that they don't actually belong in, so to speak, but at the same time, you know, I don't know. It depends on your experience level, I guess. It says, here's the read aloud. A contact waits in the Dripping Dagger Tavern cellar, promising coin for dangerous work in Skullport. But rumors whisper of mind flayers trading relics beneath the lake of black glass. So this, another thing is, I had said before in the conversation, but not in our live stream, is that I kind of wanted a little bit of homebrew mixed in here, and you don't want to use AI tools to do everything. Like, it can do like 70%, 60%, but you want to do at least 30 to 40% if possible to make it more yours, make it more human and less cliche. I mean, you'll notice that sometimes if you just start cold turkey and you don't give it any definition, it's just going to be cheesy, like way too corny or something you wouldn't want to use, you know, that sort of thing. So you kind of have to define some things ahead of time, and that's kind of what we did. So I'm going to say I would like to play a 3rd level female rogue. I don't know if I want to be a bard, a thief, assassin, you know, that sort of thing. So probably a thief, just to kind of be a little bit more generic, I guess. So I would like to play, she is a, let's say, half-elf. And I'll say, she is armed, or yeah, say she is proficient. I'm just going to give it some basic. With a dagger, rapier, and leather armor, and also a light crossbow. Just so I can kind of give it an idea of what I'm looking for. And then we're going to do the not point by, but just assigning the numbers or whatever. But what do they call that? The standard, using the standard array. And then I usually give my players 1 point to use at their discretion. So after they do point by, I give them 1 extra point and put it whatever they want. I always think that always gives them just that little extra edge, especially if they're new. If they're players that have been playing a long time, I don't usually do that. But in this case, I will have probably give her Dex or Charisma or something. I like to play a 3rd level female rogue, a thief. She is a half elf, so let's do that and see what it gives me. Perfect. Let's get your rogue ready for play. So standard array is 15, 14, plus 2 charisma, plus 1. So this already gives me these choices, so I don't need to add the extra point in there. So do I like this assignment? Yeah, let's see. Charisma, 15 for a half elf, 16 dex, 14 con. Yeah, I actually do like that. Not very strong, but so there's your hit die, proficiencies, light armor, simple weapons, hand crossbow, long swords, rapiers, short swords. Choose from 4 of these. So athletics, okay. So actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so we're gonna do you know what? To make this quicker, I'm gonna say make the most fitting choices based upon our building narrative and starting point. That way I don't have to spend a lot of time like thinking about how I want to build the character. I'm kind of speeding this along so it's not as, you know, crazy. So we're going to choose a name. I don't know if you guys have a suggestion. It always takes me an hour to figure out a name. Species, rogue, 3rd level, criminal smuggler background for Skullport flavor. Zentarum contact, fits shady but ambitious tone. Profit and survival. See, I'm already not liking some of this, but I'll go with it. Those numbers look good. I'm happy with those. It's a pretty good starting point. Let's see. If I was truly making a 2024 character, this wouldn't fly. So let's review and be certain that the character above is following the newer, because it's going off the older 14. So you want to make sure 2024 rule set, especially in regards to features and such. The character above follows the 2014 rule set. Not a bad thing, but it's just, I want to make sure we start off on the right foot here. Excellent call. Let's do a careful audit. So it's going to go through and check. So see, 2024 is in the SRD as a playable species with +2 charisma, +1. Really? Your build applied that dark vision and fey answers remain unchanged. Skill versatility, 2 extra skills you took. Okay. But what about background and such? Now offer ASI related bonuses, not race. So just getting back to the origin thing. Exactly. So instead, backgrounds give +1 to one ability and +1 to different, or +1 to 3 different ones. Okay. All right. So I see. All right, just double checking because sometimes it doesn't. Oh, wow. Why did it go up even higher? +3? I don't think so. Anyways, I think something is amiss, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'll go with 17. What the hell? It was 16. So, anyways, I don't want to spend hours on character. And I could very easily do that. I'd be, if I was by myself or not doing this live, I'd probably be spending like 2 hours on a character. Okay, so do you want me to now produce the Fantasy Grounds results? No, but we could build it in Fantasy Grounds. I have it up, just so we have a backup, I guess, or something. Let's see. So let's start the adventure in the aforementioned location in Waterdeep. Oh no, that wasn't Waterdeep. Skullport. So Skullport is underneath Waterdeep, essentially. The aforementioned session 1. Here we go. All right, so let's see what happens in session 1. Given it all those instructions, so it's hopefully some of it comes through. Okay, so the smell of salt water and mildew clings to the air of Skullport, a city carved into cavern stone and lit by the green shimmer of ghostly lanterns. Timber walkways groan above the lake of black glass, where barges drift soundlessly across the still water. Every shadow seems to conceal a knife. Every whisper feels like a bargain in the making. You move with purpose through the crooked alleys, past shanty brothels and gambling dens. The Dripping Dagger Tavern hangs precariously over the lake, its signboard etched with a dagger dripping crimson paint. Inside, raucous laughter mingles with the clatter of mugs, but your contact has arranged the meeting in the cellar, away from prying eyes. Down the stairs you go, the stone walls drip with condensation, and a single lantern casts a sickly light. In the corner, hood pulled low, sits a figure awaiting. A flask sits untouched on the table before them. As you step closer, the figure speaks in a low, rasping voice. You came. Good. I have work. Profitable work. But dangerous. Word is, mind flayers are trading relics beneath the lake of black glass. If we can intercept them, we stand to make a fortune. But you'll need a crew. I can't send you alone. So the figure leans forward, their face still half in shadows, eyes glinting with suspicion. So at this point, it gives you some tips. You can question the contact, you can accept the job, you can press for more details, you can scout around, and it even gives you insights into what you might want to use for those. So as a new player and a new GM, this might help you understand the potentials or the things that might happen or that could happen. Would you like to play this solo for now with me rolling the dice for you and narrating the outcomes, or do you want me to frame this if the rest of the party is forming around you? So what I'm going to say is let's go solo and add in the other 3. I'm not going to do more than 4 players because it's AI. There's not enough time and room. Introduce the other 3 players naturally within the narrative and not all at once. So I kind of want to build this story. I don't want to just start with 3-4 people, especially if it's a solo adventure by yourself. Let's go solo and add. Okay, so we'll see what it does. Perfect. We'll run this as a solo opening crawl, letting your rogue define the tone, and then I'll weave the other 3 characters into the story organically, one at a time, as allies or complications you cross paths with in Skullport. I think that's excellent. So you might get in a fight with someone, and then they end up being your ally later, all that kind of cool stuff. So session 1. The lantern's glow flickers as your contact studies you. Their hands drum lightly on the flask, the rhythm uneven. You catch the faint scent of tar and cheap tobacco from their cloak, a smuggler's perfume. The rasp in their voice carries the weight of someone who has lived too long underground. So I like this. We got the header here. we got this narration is italicized like we had defined, and then the dialogue is indented or quoted, and here's the dialogue. So interception won't be easy. The flayers meet their buyers in hidden grottos below the lake. You'll need stealth, timing, and trust. I can mark the route, but coins speak louder than trust in Skullport. So 10 gold now, 10 on your return. The figure replaces like a rough map that's inked on tan hide. And on the table between you, it shows a twisting trail of tunnels branching off the main docks, ending in a caravan marked only with a sigil, a skull with writhing tentacles. So here are some options, or you can ignore those. You don't have to use them. But one thing I wanted to mention here is that this could be a prompt for you to create an image based off of this. So if, let's say you're building an adventure or you want to make a handout, if you know what you're doing with AI tools and you make this, you can kind of use this as like the map, as like a little handout. It doesn't have to be like a full battle map, just like an illustration to kind of add to your game. So at this point, when you go back to look at your sessions and testing these things out, you can go, oh yeah, maybe I want to include a picture of the tavern and maybe a picture of the map that's inked on tan hide and it's resting on a table between us. So you can make a full image that shows your contact with the map on the table and the flask, or you could just do the map, whatever you want to do. But it would add to the immersion storytelling. I think it would be nice just to have probably just the map itself as a kind of, and then actually have some like scribbles on it and such. And then I like it with the ending in the cavern marked with the sigil. So I have the sigil on here, a skull with writhing tentacles. So you could put that in the description. So you can use this little bit here to inspire you to create an image for this scene. And then later on, use that in your game to either use it as a handout or a prop, or just use it for yourself for inspiration. You know? So you could pay the 10 gold deposit and take the map showing you're committed. Refuse and press for more information. Who are the buyers? What relic is being traded? Blah, blah, blah. Examine the map carefully. Investigation to check for hidden notations, or test the honesty of the contact. I don't think number 4 is important. Probably 1 through 3. So you could do all 3 of these too. So pay the 10 gold deposit and take the map showing you're committed, and then examine the map more carefully. You know, something like that, or just make up your others. So I want to say, ask more about the patron. Get a better vibe of this contact. And then maybe look around for any observers. It's probably very paranoid. So this is kind of going past and beyond the suggestions. You don't have to use those. That would be helpful though if you were a new player or maybe a new GM. Let's see. As you act, I'll narrate dice rolls and consequences. Would you like me to open roll, or would you like me to declare?
We're gonna do.
So here we go. So the cellar drips with moisture. The stone sweating. Oh, what? Oh, let's see. Okay, so it says cellar drips with moisture. The stone sweating under the weight of the city above. You lean on the table, your half-elven eyes narrowing as you study your contact. The map, the flask, the cloak, it all feels carefully arranged like bait. You decide not to touch the map yet, so you can do an insight check. So you roll a d20, get a 16 total. So you catch the subtle twitch of their mouth when they say profit. It's not greed, but desperation. This isn't someone looking to get rich, it's someone trying to climb out of debt or out from under a patron's thumb. Whoever they answer to is dangerous. And if you use perception, then you get a different kind of thing. So you notice movement in the shadows at the far side of the cellar. A man pretending to mop the floor pauses every time your contact speaks. His bucket has no water and his eyes flick to the table too often. He's listening, not cleaning. A lookout, maybe some muscle. So that's kind of cool. I like that. So the contact lowers her voice, clearly unnerved that you haven't grabbed the bait yet. Patron, it's not for me to say. They call themselves the Collector. Rare things, dangerous things. Mind flayers know how to find such wares. I'm just a middle hand, but if you succeed, they'll know your name and scope word. They push the map towards you, then sit back, gauging your reaction. So then at this point, you have other pieces. So this is the back and forth adventure part, and I might, before I have to go to bed tonight, I might do some more of this. This is already fun to me. So this could be a combination of entertainment. It could be a way to polish up your GM or player skills. It could also be a way to start building your own content and play testing it as you create this with the AI tool. So, and then you can even start making images for it if you're comfortable with that. So this is just a starting point here for this particular session. And remember, this is only supposed to last hour, hour and a half tops. Once you're done, then you get the summary. And then you'll go to session 2, maybe even a separate conversation. But the way that ChatGPT works now is that if we're in the same project, it can look at other conversations to gain insight and direction. So if I start another separate conversation, I'm not going to run out of memory or out of context as quickly, or tokens. And then it will still cross-reference what happened in this conversation. So that's the beauty of this. So you can break it down into sessions and then go to each session. And then later on, you can figure out how you want to write your adventure and how to piece it together. And you can even take the whole of each one of these, export it as text, then run it through a different AI tool to give you suggestions on how to make this into adventure and have a template set up for that. So you can really get a lot of work done in a weekend. I think you can write, honestly, if you were dedicated, you didn't have anything else to do, I think in a weekend you can knock out like a 50-page adventure easily with images, if you know what you're doing and if you have the time. Now that doesn't include adding it into Fantasy Grounds. That might take you some time too. But I think in a couple weeks you can have a 50-page adventure knocked out pretty, with tokens and everything else, if you have access to the tools, you have the time, that sort of thing. Because time's your biggest setback or your biggest thing. So, anyways, this would be how I would use a program like ChatGPT or Anthropic or Grok, whatever you're using, to help you build a template for the type of adventure you want to write or test, or if you had a piece of another adventure in Fantasy Grounds or PDF format, you can copy and paste that section into your project file and see what kind of output it gives you. Like, if my players go into this room, what could happen, or do something like that, and give them a little bit more context than that. But give them the PDF, reference the section that you're going to be playing, give them the SRD or the starting rules or whatever, make sure you have all that, and then make sure you define like how you want the output to come out, and then that sort of thing. So I don't know if I like this suggestion thing, but if I was new to role-playing games and to fantasy kind of RPGs and stuff, this would be helpful to me. I think it's helpful now because when you have like I don't know, you have like writer's block or kind of like a brain fart or whatever, this might help you with that. So, keep you engaged, even if you're kind of dead or you're not really thinking, you can say, oh, I want to do number 1 occasionally. But like this says, call out the fake cleaner. Confrontation could spook your contact. So you might want to write this a little bit better. So I will call out the fake cleaner and then comma whatever you think is necessary. You don't have to use this exact response because you're going to get a different outcome depending on how you word this too. So this could be important as well. So these are just ideas. Play along, draw them out, ask them what happens if you refuse the work, So you can do all kinds of really interesting stuff with role playing. And I like the narrative thing because I like this because a lot of times it's pass or fail. Oh, you rolled a 16, you need a 14. That's okay once in a while. So you say, okay, I rolled 16, I passed. And you can ask your players, well, what does that look like? In this case, it's giving us that because the DM is the actual AI tool. And I'm kind of lazy and I don't want to do a lot of typing. So this is fine. But anyhow, folks, I hope that helps a little bit. I don't know if this kind of content matters or if you guys would use this, but it's one of those things that you need to decide for yourself if it's worth the time and effort and if you're going to, benefit from it. But you guys take care. Leave feedback in the, after the video if you want. If you need any other resources or tips, let me know. Also, join our Fantasy Grounds Academy community. Donate to us if you want, and happy gaming. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye bye.